Okay. Okay. Do everybody agree? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm saying agree on, yeah, touching and agreeing to God's word. Yeah. Brother Falk? Yeah. Yeah. First Corinthians chapter 11. Yeah. Yeah, 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 go, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, Titus said let her teach the children. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
She can teach. I'm going to tell you who she can teach in a few minutes. Let me
Okay.
read the scripture. Okay. First Corinthians, 14th chapter. Here's the whole issue. Verse 33. For God is not the author of confusion. That's the issue.
Okay, let me first 11 first. Okay, because First Corinthians 11 tells us, uh, uh, yeah, having a hair covered, I'm going down, going down. Y- Yeah, yeah. Basically, it deals with the covering of the hair and all that. But also in that text it says that God is the head of Christ, Christ is the head of man, and man is the head of the woman. So there's order and there's organization when it comes to God. And so the idea is we don't break the order and we don't break the organization of God. Because now in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, he speaks of the order.
Let me read it. For God, verse 33. For God is not the author of confusion. That's the goal. But he wants peace in the church. As in all churches of the saints. Let your women keep silent in the church.
Yeah.
For it is not permitted unto them to speak, for they are commanded, watch that verse carefully, to be under obedience, as also says the law. For if they will learn anything, let them ask their husband at home. For it is a shame for a woman to speak in the church. Now,
Yeah.
let's go to Titus. I'm going to show you that she can teach.
Okay, and let me hit verse 40 there. Verse 40 says, let all things
Yeah, let
be
all-
done decently and in order. So there's an order. So you have to maintain the order.
Yeah, but she can teach. Watch
Yeah,
this.
she can teach.
Let's go to Titus, the second chapter, and verse 3.
Yep.
The aged women likewise, that they be in behavior, as become the holiest, are not false accusers, not slanderers, not given to much wine, teachers
Of good things.
of good things,
Yes, sir.
that they may teach the young
Young.
women to be sober, to love their husband, to love their children, to be discreet,
Chase
people
keepers
that
at home.
good obedience to their own husband, that
Let
the word of God
be not
be
evil.
not blasphemed.
Yeah, to be blasphemed. Yeah. Yeah, and so you see, that's where the old adage come from, that old saying that came, so go to home, so go to church, because the women have the most powerful ministry in the religious family. The house, she has the ministry of the house, and if she ministered to the house,
That's Titus,
chapter
the second
2.
chapter,
Yeah,
and you can start at verse 1 through 5. Verse 1 through 5.
yeah, and so
She can teach.
that's the structure, that's the power structure of the church. It's from the house to the assembly.
And see, he was
If
dealing with public worship
Yeah,
Under the old law, a woman could not speak
yeah,
in that public worship.
Yeah. Because you're coming from the house to the assembly. If you're not trained at home how to assemble, you ain't gonna know how to behave at the assembly. So at the house, they teach you how to behave at the assembly. You know, while we were children coming up, and our parents took us to church the first time we had understanding. Don't you embarrass me, and don't you better behave yourself. And they didn't have to say a word to this, gave us a look, right? We knew we was in trouble. Because we knew there was a way we were supposed to conduct ourselves and behave ourselves. We're being taught at home how to behave ourselves in public.
Remember when Miriam challenged the man of God, Moses?
Mm-hmm.
Did you the only one God talking about?
Yeah.
What happened to her?
Yeah.
She became leprosy and had to be put out of the camp until Moses prayed for her.
Yeah.
God has always respected the man of God.
Yeah. So
Under the old law, a woman could not open
yeah.
her mouth.
So see that. So there's order, but there's structure within order. Everybody has a role to play. I like to think of like Norris mentioned that time. He said you have to know where your lane and stay in your lane. Yeah. No, you will stay in your lane. If we all stay in our lane, then there's this smooth flow. But when we get out of our lane and start bumping into other people, we're going to start causing confusion, and problems going to come. Now, brothers and sisters in Christ, we have to work together because we're in this race together. Men don't dominate the women. She had to be submissive to God first, and men got to be submissive to God. And if both of them are submissive to God, both of them will function properly before God. But if the man try to dominate the woman and say, eh, now he's out of order. And he's going to cause conflict with God and with the woman. And if the woman do the same thing, she can cause conflict with God and the man. So we stay in our lane, behave like we're supposed to behave, we have a good flow together.
And women must keep in mind the Bible teaches that a woman cannot use authority over the man.
Yeah, Brother Falk already brought that up, you know. He brought up the point of authority. Didn't you, Brother Falk? That authority. And authority doesn't mean treating people any kind of way. Just, you know, because we know the police got authority, but they don't have the right to treat us any kind of way. And sometimes they abuse their authority, but they don't have, yeah. Yeah. So there's a perception, you know. So there's perception in things of what's going on, and then every organization there's perception because you know there been some congregations I was in where we had very strong women, and people would come and visit the church and say, man, y'all women are leading the church, y'all brothers is in the corner, you know, your brother fault. Yeah. Yeah, everybody supposed to be praying. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And going back to Hannah, every young Christian mother needs to pray the prayer Hannah prayed.
Yeah.
Lord, give me a son, and I will give him to you back. And
Yeah.
I taught a lesson on it. I asked the church, who are you giving your sons to today?
Yeah.
Hannah prayed. Hannah had a beautiful prayer. She was asking for a son for the right purpose.
Yeah.
She told God, if you give me a son, because she lived in a time when it was a joy to have a son. Because he had the responsibility now of taking care of the family if
Yeah.
the father died. So she said, give me a son, and I will give him to you back. That was Samuel.
Yeah.
And when she had that son, she carried him to the priest, and he stayed there. They became a man, and he became a great prophet for the Lord.
Yeah.
So she asked for a son for the right purpose.
Yeah.
And she had a great prayer. Women have one of the great responsibilities of the church. They don't realize that.
Yeah.
You have a job to teach your children, to teach the young women how to be good women, to teach your children how to be obedient. You have a great responsibility.
Yeah.
You just don't realize.
Yeah, I remember, and some of you probably remember this too, growing up in the community when children behave, They didn't look for they didn't say, where's that boy daddy at? They said, what, man, who's that boy mama? They thought about mama first because if they was acting up, then mama must have done something wrong. And so that's when I learned the reason mama was so hard on us, because she could be brought to be, she could be made to be looked ashamed in the community. And she said, you know where you come from? You better act like you got some sense when you leave here. Daddy didn't tell us that. Mama told us that. And so we knew that when we went out, but if we came back, it was going to reflect badly on who? Mama. And so that's why mama has such a strong influence in our lives. Your brother fault. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she gave us something that God could work with. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, give God something to work with. Yeah.
God gave her the son, and her husband said, am I not better than you than 10 sons?
Yeah.
But she lived in a time when it was a joy to have a son.
Yeah. So the house, and what comes out the house is a reflection on the mother. I think that's very much seen in that story that most sisters like from what's that Proverbs, that virtuous woman, how she's well spoken up in the gate, how she's an entrepreneur. I mean, he just lavished the praise upon this woman and her conduct, her behavior, how she goes about her day, the business of her life, the way she do things. And then I would hear women all the time saying, I want to be like that virtuous woman. I want to be that industrious woman. I want to be able to take care of my family. I want them to be well looked upon and well respected in the community. And so that's the ideal image that Solomon lays out there for us. And then Peter picks it up. Peter tells us that the woman that's not the braiding of her hair, the putting on of jewels and all of that, to try to make herself stand out from others. He says, but it's the quiet spirit. It's the humble spirit of the heart. The thing that God values, that meek and quiet spirit. There's a characteristic that he said that God looks for, and not only is it visible by God, but it's visible by others. Because in her conduct, even if her household is not faithful, her husband not faithful, in her conduct, she can win her husband. She can win her household by her conduct. I said, now that's some powerful stuff there. So women have a powerful role, but if they just look and they say, oh, that's where all the limelight is on the person that's standing up there, then what do you get? You get something that's distorted now, And yeah, women say, I'm as good as any man. My wife's aunt, Ralph's older sister, I preached about any man. She grew up there at the NCI because Ralph went there when he was 8 years old. They left him there because they were missionary workers starting churches all over the place. In Michigan, Kentucky, Mesa, Texas, and New Mexico. And so they left him there with Keeper, so Keeper raised them up in the church. And she said, listen to all these great preachers that come through. And she go back and you know how girls, they mimic the preachers, and Mary could out-preach any man. And she raised up 4 man preachers in the house. And them some powerful men. Man, they ministered churches that people call mega churches across the north and the west because of her upbringing of those boys. She taught them the art of preaching. And she helped made her husband, to be the great man that he is. So wife has a great role to play. Women have a great role. But one of the questions that I heard out of comfort that a sister was sitting there and she was listening, she said, y'all said let the wife ask her husband, what if she ain't married? What if she don't have a husband? Then who's she supposed to ask? I said, well, she's somebody's daughter. Well, what is a single parent home and all she's got is a mother? I said, well, there's a male in the family somewhere. There's a male in the family somewhere. Yeah. And so to try to skirt around that if she don't have a husband. And see, that's the devil will grab hold of any little thing that he think that there's a hole or crack in to try to wedge himself in so he could cause confusion. And that's all that was happening here at Corinth. The devil was using these folks to get a wedge into the church, to create that confusion, to stifle the progress of the church, because the church was spreading like wildfire. And to slow the progress down, to stop it from going forward, he was throwing everything he could at it. And Paul was working vigorously with all that was in him. Even when he was in jail, his mind was still what? On the church, on protecting the faith.
And you got to remember where Corinth church was planted.
Mm-hmm.
Corinth was called the Eye of Greece.
Yeah.
Everything that came to that coast
Yeah.
came through Corinth.
Yeah.
It was a seaport city. It was a trading center. So you had everything in Corinth, but Paul was still able to plant the church. But remember, those people that came into the church came out of Corinth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Paul had to do a lot of teaching to get them away from that environment.
Yeah, it's like in America. What is one of America on the East Coast? What is one of America's greatest seaports on the East Coast? One of America's on the East Coast. It's in the, yeah, every state got one, but the greatest one is in New York. All that comes down from the North America flows in there. All that comes from Europe flows in there. And you remember, it was the gateway. They call it the gateway to liberty. All the people that was leaving oppressed countries, all the wars that was happening, everybody had to come through New York. So New York was that center place where every culture of man flowed into. And that's why it became what they call the great melting pot. Yeah, you find more cultures in New York than any other state in the Union. You find more cultures in New York than any other nation on the planet. Because like Jesse said, it's a seaport, and everybody flows in through there. And so even like people, I didn't know this until when I went in the military. I thought people just come to Florida, come to America. But the people in the islands, African American, they can't just come to Florida. They just can't come to America. If they was under British control or French control, they got to go to France or Britain, and then they come back through that way. Now, if you're Caucasian, it's a little different for you. You can come through the customs. There's no problem. But for some reason, I don't know why, the African Americans, the Haitians, all them, you got to go through a custom process to get in. You got to go through an immigration process to get in. And I guess they were afraid that so many of us will come from all over that we will flood the nation, so they had to really put a control on that. But if you ever get online and look it up, you'll see the hardest people to get into in America is a person of color. Now, others can flow in, but you ain't going to flow in. It's just the way it is. And so, but that's where everybody has to come. So they come up, they go down through Canada and to the States. That's how they get in. Because Canada, we recognize Canada. We recognize the people from Canada. You get a citizenship from England or Canada, you're good to go. All your credentials can travel with you. But if you come up out the islands here, you can't bring nothing with you. None of your credentials count. But if you come those other directions, if you're a doctor, if you're a nurse, if you're a policeman, whatever your credentials is, you can bring them. But if you come up through those islands, forget it. It ain't gonna work for you. And so we work with Customs Patrol in the military. I'm like, that's a shame. You handicap this group of people, and you privilege the other group of people. No wonder everybody got to live in the ghetto because they come. You don't respect that. They got great skills, but you don't respect them. And so people flow in that way. But when we look at the Bible, all these people that was coming to Corinth, main thing, the problem at Corinth was not with the people, the strangers that was coming, was not with the strange doctrines and the strange religions that they were bringing, but it was with the Christian system. The Christian system among the Jews that came, that seeded the church. The Jews are the one that seeded the church. And when those that seeded the church became the problem in the church, when others tried to come in, and that was why Peter struggled so. When you read after chapter 10, it talks about Peter's struggle with doing what God said, to use those keys that God gave him. Only Peter could use the keys. After Peter used the keys, then it became available to all of us to use the gospel key. But in the beginning, there was only one person that God gave those keys to use, and that was Peter. And that's what God told me. You got to be the one to go to the Gentiles. Yeah. And so Peter's up, yeah. So Peter, in chapter 10, he's on the rooftop. He's wrestling with that. Because Peter, I was told, I don't have no deal. I don't deal with these Gentiles. I don't even deal with the Samaritans. I go 3-day journey to avoid those people. I'll go 3 miles out of the way to avoid them. And I don't deal with no Gentiles. I don't deal with no Samaritan half-breed Jews. I don't deal with them. And so now you telling me I got to go to those very people. I can't stand them. I say they stink. I say there's something wrong with them. You know, it's the kind of stuff that folks used to say, but our ancestors, oh, they stink. They eat all that dirty food. All that kind of stuff. They ain't really human. Y'all ain't really human. Y'all 2/3 of a human. Any negative thing they could conjure up about you, they threw it at you. But God said you are a creature, you're entitled to the gospel. And so Paul was wrestling with that, yes. That's it. Mm-hmm. Yep. To open the doors of the gospel door to open the key to church. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, but it's still only one key, the gospel key. It's the gospel key that opens the door to eternal salvation. Peter used it on the day of Pentecost in Acts chapter 2, and he used it again in Acts chapter 10. And that's when the Gentiles, our ancestors, came in. Our Gentile ancestors was able to come into the kingdom and find a seat in the kingdom. And we have to protect that because it didn't come easy. Peter struggled with that. God had to help him with that. And then when Peter went, Peter didn't just say, well, I gotta go. The Bible said Peter took some witnesses with him. Peter was so concerned. Peter said, he said, if I gotta go, I can't go by myself. I gotta have some witnesses because I know how my family gonna act if I let these people in. It's just like when Moses married his wife. How did Miriam and them other Jews act? They were acting some kind of way towards her because she wasn't one of them. Yeah, and so now Peter going to go down there and invite somebody else in the house. How the family going to act? You know, y'all know, just think about if somebody bring another culture into our community, into your house, your family house, a culture that ain't never been part of your family lineage, and here they come. Ain't somebody in your family they have something to say about that? Why you raise him to talk to them kind of people? Why they spending time over there? It's real, ain't it? So we're going to have some feelings. So it's the same thing here. So Peter has to contend with all that. And he has to stand up there in Acts chapter 15 and defend himself for that. Now, he's the chief apostle. But they didn't care that he was a chief apostle. He still had to defend himself. He had to defend why did he do what he did. And he said, God made choice among us a long time ago. God did this. I didn't do this because they said, you. Why you do? Brother, somehow, why did you do that? Why did you do this here? You better have a defense. He said, God made the choice. I did, a long time ago, that by my mouth, the Gentiles should hear the gospel and believe. That's how they got in. They got in because God put them in, not because I put them in. And so that's the message that we have to care for. A person can't join it. That concept of people just joining the church. If you join it, you done join the wrong thing because you can't join God. God got to add you. The only way God's going to add you is when you meet his requirements. Then he adds you. You do everything you want to do. If you don't meet his requirements, you just fancifully believing in something that's not real. And so Paul is fighting this stuff to tell people, if you believe what these Judaizers are saying, you're believing a false doctrine that cannot save. Paul told the Galatians, he said, this kind of a doctrine is a bewitching doctrine. It's a trickery doctrine. It's a doctrine to steal your salvation. If we are an angel from heaven, bring you any other doctrine than which we have preached the gospel, other than the gospel, let it be a curse. You can't accept anything but the gospel truth if you want to be saved. And so that's what Paul is fighting for in Corinth. So as we end this third chapter here, that's Paul's defense. If you want to be saved, you better obey the gospel and the gospel alone. You can't add to it. You can't subtract from it. You got to do just what it says, just like God said, and you'll get just what God promised you. And so the mortar bench can't do it. You can't get it that way. You can't get it becoming a Jehovah's Witness. You can't get it becoming a Seventh-day Adventist. All these other systems cannot give you what Jesus gave. They can't substitute for Jesus. They try to use Jesus stuff, but they can't substitute. And so we have to be wise enough to know and be able to defend, because like I told you, all kinds of stuff is in the church today. All kinds of stuff is coming at you today. If you haven't hit it, if it haven't hit your ears yet, it will. And so you better have a defense. You better know, like Brother Antoine said, you better have studied to show yourself approved unto God. That you could be a good workman, because all kinds of stuff that comes, it sounds good. The devil's good. The devil did about somebody wrote the text said, the devil presents us with false evidences appearing to be real. That's how good he is. He's the best counterfeiter on the planet. But if you buy what he's selling, you're going to lose everything. We want to have a closing prayer. Brother Glenn, will you give us a closing prayer?